a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, Brian Allan comes by to talk about his new book, The Hole in the Sky, which is all about portals. Now, also in this episode, Rita Roberts joins us to create a portal of her own while we are here doing the episode together. It is all in the video version, guys, linked down there in the show description. Also want to make sure that you guys see her work. It is located down there as well, and shout outs to Rita for joining us for this amazingly cool conversation. Now, in the episode here, we go over his close encounters of some otherworldly things going on. We also discover, of course, what is a portal? Is it a natural phenomena? What creates the conditions? As well as, should you stumble into one? Should you come across one, right? Also, in the afterthought here, which is a wonderful way to support the show, we get the connections between portals and the Roslyn Chapel. We go into the pictures, and it is beautiful. So make sure that you guys join us for that. Great way to support your favorite show. It's located down in the show description down there. As well, signing up for the correct tier will get you into the live hangouts that we're doing. Just had an amazing one with Polymath Jenny, which is an incredibly cool series, continuing with the family tree of reality over there. So, wonderful way again, guys, to support the show, and plenty more to go into in the afterthought. But for now, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Brian Allan. Welcoming to the show, we have Brian Allan. You are an author, a researcher, and just one of the coolest people ever. You are also a personal request from Philip Mansell to have you over for the audience because he knew how much of a banger this was going to be in advance. He knew your work, your book, The Hole in the Sky, which is all about portals. So we're talking portals here today, people. Now, all the ways to find Brian are going to be located down in the show description. I also want to make sure that we point out the remarkable Rita Roberts, who is going to be joining us as our creative expansion artist for this particular conversation, and her artwork and all the ways to find her located down in the show description as well. But you're going to see why this is so cool, because this conversation and this art is perfect together. So again, Mr. Allan, man, very cool to have you here. All the ways, like I said, are going to be linked down in the show notes on how to find you. We have a very cool conversation here. So let's just start it up top for you, introducing yourself for the audience that may be unfamiliar with you, sir.
Okay. My name is Brian Allan. I'm aged 80. I live in Scotland, over in the UK here. And I've been doing this stuff for the past, I would say hands-on, for the past 60-odd years. I don't know how much you want me to fill in about this, but I can tell you how I got started into this. Is it, you want something like that?
That would be perfect, yeah.
Okay, well, it's a bit of a story, because I got started in this aged 2. I had my first encounter aged 2. And I remember this like it was yesterday. A psychologist I spoke to once said it was a hypnagogic hallucination. It was nothing of the kind. This was no hallucination. This was 100% real. This happened, and like I say, I can remember like it was yesterday. And after I spoke to Darrell Sims, I think you're probably familiar with Darrell, he confirmed what I thought it was. Okay. So imagine, if you will, I'm 2 years old. I'm lying in a cot. Okay. I've woken up. It's early morning. The sun's streaming right along the bottom of the cot, right from the bedroom window. And right in front of me, my father was a musician, and in the bedroom he kept a baby grand piano. Now, these things aren't small. Trust me, they're pretty big. So there's a baby grand piano and a piano stool, and it's maybe about 6 feet from the side of the cot. And open up my eyes, and standing between me and the piano stool, there's a being. A humanoid being, about 4 foot tall. It's dressed in a one-piece tight-fitting suit uniform thing. Even the shoes, it wasn't shoes, it was like a pair of tights, but they weren't tight. But you know what I'm saying? Everything was, the feet were encased in this green. It was encased in green. And round its waist, it wasn't a belt, because the buckle was like a device. It wasn't a buckle, it was a device of some kind. Now I saw this thing, and I went, you know, and I blinked my eyes and sort of looked, and this thing was just standing with its arms folded, and it was watching me, really laid back, really cool. There was no threat from it. So I went to sleep as kids do. I mean, you don't get frightened of this stuff because there was nothing happening. It was just standing there. And a little bit later, I would say about maybe a year later, in the same bedroom, again, it was early in the morning. Now, this would be 1940, I guess 1947, around there, 40, yeah, about 47, about then. And this is before the sort of standard picture of the UFO, UAP with a disc, okay? And I had this, you would almost call it a lucid dream. Although at the time I hadn't a clue what a lucid dream was. I just know I knew I saw this thing. And there, it was like this huge disc-shaped craft, okay? And I knew it had come for me. And again, I just went to sleep again and gone. Anyway, I spoke to Darrell Sims about this because at the time, as a child, especially when I saw this humanoid, I assumed it was a fairy or something, you know, just some of those lines. But latterly, when I tied it in with this disc-shaped craft, I realised that this was an ET of some kind. So I told Darrell about this, and he said, "Oh yeah, my friend," said, you were taken and put back again." Okay. So I would say that, and I told him also about this disc-shaped craft, and he said, "Yeah, you're probably taken there as well." So I was taken twice from this bedroom, aged, did I say, around 2-3 years old. So I've actually, and this has shaped my entire life since then, because it sent me on this road of initially ufology, but latterly it became paranormal, and it never frightened me, but it just set the course of my life. I devoted my life to the ufology and the paranormal. And the more I looked at it, the more I realised how the two subjects were completely interlinked. There's very little difference between the two of them. So I could guess, you could say that is why I'm sitting here talking to you right now, I guess.
It's amazing the redirects that life will offer you, right? That give you an opportunity to go in a completely different direction. Because had that never have happened, you know, what do you think you would be doing right now? Do you think you'd be interested in the subject? Do you think eventually it would have caught up to your attention?
It's hard to answer that because I've been so immersed in it my entire life that I can't see I've been interested in anything else for any other reason. It's just because I've been just utterly immersed in it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay. Well, it's fascinating also this younger encounter sort of set you up. So do you think they altered you in some way from a young baby, from what you were to maybe something different?
Oh, dude, how can, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. All I know is that in the course of doing what I've done, I've seen stuff, okay, that people just don't normally get to see. I've met people who you could say are just different. There are people who share my point of view, but some of them are very different from convention. You could argue some of them are a bit eccentric. You could argue that I am eccentric for that matter, and I don't really care. But yeah, I would say that it's definitely reshaped my life in all sorts of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Well, I don't think it would. It's hard to say it would have been taking the same path if this hadn't happened. I don't know. I just don't know. There's no answer to that.
Well, and it's one of those bootstrap paradoxes, right? In time travel, to where one thing begets the other, and if one wouldn't have existed, so then you get caught in this loop kind of a thing. And maybe you realize later on, after you die or something, that you were the alien that actually helped you out, you know? And so it's this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy in these ways. And this place is mind-blowing enough for it to be possible, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, you've just put me in mind of a science fiction story that I read many years ago, when it was a time travel thing, and the people who were on the journeys, when they took them into this group, take them into the past, were warned: do not step off the path for any reason whatsoever. Somebody did squashed a bug, and the flow of the future changed.
Yes, it's one of those butterfly flaps its wings, right? Causes a tsunami. Yeah,
That's
it's
it.
these
Yeah.
implications that are fascinating. So where have you then gone from? Actually, before we go there, let me ask you about your childhood. Your parents, any of them in military?
My father, he was in the Royal Air Force. Yeah, he was RAF. Yeah.
Do you think that your encounter with the UFO had anything to do with your dad's job?
I've never ever thought of it like that. You know, this is the first time I've ever thought of it like that. But I can't see it because he did, as it was in national service, and at the end of the national service, he came out of the RAF and went back to his civilian job again, and that was it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually just if you're enlisted, there seems to be something about military and their family. They seem to also experience a high level of high strangeness.
Yeah.
I got another question. Do you know your blood type?
AB. Yeah. Yes, I do. Exactly.
Okay. So is it AB?
AB positive. AB positive.
Okay. And then that O negative, that invisible blood, usually is pretty a magnet for the freaky woo-woo as well. And then you may have a stellium in your 12th house. There's something actually to do with astrology that may make you more predisposed to having some paranormal encounters. And it has to do with 3 or more planets in your 12th house. It's called a stellium in your 12th house. And if you have that, so there, in my observation, there seems to be a correlation between people who have that.
I'm a Pisces, if it helps.
You are. You got some Leo in there somewhere, a rising or a moon or something, don't you? Do you know your rising and moon?
No, I'm holding my hand.
Okay.
I don't know.
Send me your stuff. My wife's great at this stuff. And send me your stuff. We'll look at your stelliums. And these are the new data points that I'm looking at whenever I'm asking people about their encounters. Definitely military family. In the U.S., it's usually if you had an indigenous lineage on your mother's side, in addition to military family, you were almost guaranteed to be a part of some MyLab program. It's interesting. Well, I didn't mean to make you question your whole reality there, but your dad's job, you know, he may have signed you up for something unwillingly, right? So let's though get into your book here, man. So the hole in the sky, portals. We think about portals, as you can see down there. Miss Rita Roberts is our artist who is creating something amazing. And for our audio-only audience, check the link in the show description for the video version of this. And you can watch this portal be created with us in real time here. So, Brian Allan, portals, what got those on your radar?
Okay. It was, how can I put this? I'd always been fascinated by the project, by the prospect of being able to flash across an entire universe in literally a nanosecond. You go from point A to point B. How could you possibly do that? Well, I think the Einstein-Rosen bridge was an example, you know, of a wormhole. And we'll say a wormhole is how this is done, but how do you create a wormhole? Well, by our technology, we can't, except maybe they're messing with something at CERN. I've no idea. Who would know? They're not going to tell you anyway. But I have heard CERN that they have been messing. Oops, I just lost myself.
You went into a portal. And he's back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, okay. Well, I came across the possibility of this when I started researching Roslyn Chapel, of all places. Okay. Now, I first came across Roslyn in the 1980s. I mean, it's only been there for like 600-700 years, but I just stumbled across it, you know. And I read about it and the stuff that was supposed to be there. So my wife and I paid a visit, and, you know, it was, at the time when I went, it was pretty run down. They didn't even have a gift shop, would you believe? So you couldn't exit through the gift shop. Terrible, absolutely shocking.
Terrible.
But it's different now. They've got a proper visitors centre and all the rest of it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I knew there was something very special about this chapel. In fact, when we visited Israel a couple of years back on a cruise, we went to the Church of the Nativity, and the chapel at that time, it's all gone now. It's changed now because the whole vibe of the place has changed. It's become very commercial now. But at the time, the gift shop, as you say, it had the same feel as the Church of the Nativity. This intangible feeling that there was a presence about the place. You could almost cut it off in little lumps and take it away with you. You know, there's this amazing feeling of presence about the place. Anyway, we had a look, and we visited a couple of times. And they opened a little coffee shop, and we would go through and have a cup of coffee and stuff. Anyway, we decided that when I got really into this sort of thing, and I was reading about the possibilities opened by Roslyn Chapel, one of the tales associated with the place is that there is a real doorway, a gateway to heaven in this place. Okay? Now, I don't know if that was a figurative thing or a literal thing. I suspect it's literal, and it was just a misinterpretation of what's actually there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm gonna have to cough. Excuse me. Beg your pardon.
It's very
I've
kind.
got a bit of a tickly throat. Anyway, so in 1995, 96, around then, we decided we'd pay a visit with mediums, psychics and mediums. So it was my wife and I, and there was two sets of mediums, two husband and wife pairs, neither of them had been in Roslyn Chapel before, and neither of them knew each other, which is absolutely fine, even by reputation, they'd never heard of each other. So what we did, when my wife went with one pair, I went with the other, and we walked round the chapel. Okay, what you round about it? It's inside. And at the east end of Roslyn Chapel, there is what is called the Lady Chapel. Have you ever been? No, I take it you've never been in Roslyn? No?
Not
okay.
yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I've got pictures pulled up here. It's beautiful.
Cool, yeah. Okay. Well, down in the east end of the chapel, there is the Lady Chapel. And there are 3 altars. There's actually 4 altars. One's called the High Altar, but we can leave that out the road because it's not accessible anyway. But the 3 altars we're interested in is the left-hand side one is called the St. Matthew altar, because as well in Roslyn Chapel, it's also called the Collegiate Church of St. Matthew. It was in its time, it was a collegiate church. It was a Catholic church. It is no longer. In the time of the Reformation, they got all hot and bothered about the Catholic Church and stuff, and it became an Episcopalian church and a Protestant church. It still functions as a church to this day. And they're still a bit, anyway. When we walked around with them, we didn't sort of talk about this until the very end, until we were coming to leave, that both sets of mediums thought there was something very strange about this St. Matthew altar. In fact, one of them said, it's an astral doorway. She said, there's an astral doorway here. And the thing is, there's people on the other side who want to come through to this side. Now, a lot of the rest of the guests, and the actual customers who walk in, pay their money and take a walk around, they were starting to pick up on this, because one of the mediums she was starting to get a bit upset at the power of this thing. So I said, look, I think we'd better shut this down before we sort of draw unwanted attention to it. She said, I think you're probably right. So we just left it. We left the place and went and had a cup of coffee and sat down and had a cup of coffee. So we talked about it. Now, the other set of mediums that was with my wife, they came up with a similar, there was something there. There was an anomaly here. So we had to leave it at that, because there was nothing else. We knew there was an anomaly. They knew there was something strange about the St. Matthew altar. So we had to leave it at that. So I did some more digging. And I came up with a concept called the Devil's Chord. Now, the Devil's Chord is a tritone. It's an augmented fourth. So it's a musical interval. Now, the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages banned it. They banned this Devil's Chord from any form of church music whatsoever, because if the chord was sung, most would be sung, but if the chord was sung in a church, you would tend to find that some of the audience, some of the congregation would start tripping out, okay? Because the frequency of the vibration in the church was actually causing them to hallucinate slightly, that they were getting visions of something else. And the church banned it immediately, because they were the sole arbiters of who would or would not have visions in a church. And the sort of hoi polloi, the common guys like us, we weren't allowed to have that. They would decide anyway. Of course, that all passed and all came to be sorted out. So I was working with a guy called Bill Scobie, and Bill came up with this concept of, let's create the Devil's Chord ourselves. So this was nothing more than a fluke. It was just a chance, because what we came up with was not actually the Devil's Chord. It was something else, was very close to it, and it was F sharp, C, and A were the 3 notes in this chord.
F sharp and C are part of the Devil's. It's right here, yeah. F sharp and C.
Yeah, F sharp, C, and A we added as well.
You added the A. Yeah.
Now what we have, F is 310 hertz, C is 535 hertz, and A is 880 hertz. Now we decided we didn't tell. We had to tell the people at Roslin, we're going to be coming up to visit early now, and could we get access to the place? And they said, yeah. But we didn't actually tell them why, which I suppose is quite naughty. We should really have told them why, but we didn't. But we also found that Bill had a look at these three chords, these three sets of frequencies. And he was into gematria he still is into gematria in quite a big way. Now, gematria is an old-fashioned way of concealing information, okay? And he came up with the idea that the word in gematria comes at 373 hertz, which now F sharp is 370. Okay, now F sharp that is the frequency of the planet, by the way. You probably know that, okay. But in gematria, it comes in at 373 hertz. Jesus calculates out at 515 hertz. Now C is 535, so it ain't all that far away. And A, which is 880 hertz, well, you come out with the word Iesus, which in Greek stands for Jesus, and that is 880 hertz. Okay, so as I said, and that's only 8 hertz away from the A. So
it's
anyway,
interesting how close Jesus is, and how much was Jesus again? 500 and what?
Jesus is 515 hertz.
515. Okay. The rose vibrates as a natural frequency of 528, the heart chakra frequency.
Yep. Now, I'm just going to jump in with something just now. I don't know if you've ever watched the Curse of it's called the Curse of Skinwalker Ranch in the UK here. Yeah. Well, I watched it. And if it ain't just a wind-up, if it's not just people taking the piss, quite frankly, I'm assuming that what they're doing is legitimate, because you've got to, because I'd be awful disappointed if it wasn't. But one of the episodes that we watched quite recently across here was they were blasting these anomalies with sound waves, and they were getting odd reactions off them. And this sort of was very satisfying for me, okay, because I thought, wow, Anyway, I'll get back, I'll park that to one side and get back to the Devil's Cord, or the version of the Devil's Cord. We arrived in 2005, 2006, around that time. And we went along, and I'd taken a frequency generator. I'd worked out a series of chords based on the Devil's Cord, and I'd loaded them down. I downloaded a frequency generator, in point of fact, from the internet. Okay, and I'd actually created these chords, this particular chord, on my computer on the laptop. So we toddled off to Roslin, got access, and we kicked off this thing, just generating this particular note, this sound. Now, unbeknown to us, this is where it started getting quite exciting. Because unbeknown to us, one of the guys who was with us, he'd wandered off. He was an acoustic therapist. He wandered off down at the crypt, okay? And he started toning. He had come along with his tuning forks, and you ding, and then he started toning. So what we had was the tone that was coming from the crypt, which you could hear quite clearly, and the tone that's coming from the laptop. And I looked at each other, oh yeah, that's fine. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a third tone. The chapel started creating a third tone entirely on its own. And we looked at each other and we went, whoa, what's happening, Then a few seconds later, a fourth tone kicked off. So the chapel is creating two harmonics based on what we're actually creating. One with the guy with his voice, and the laptop. Well, the thing is, the guy downstairs, he had no idea this was happening. He didn't know. Okay. So we stopped toning, and instantly the other two tones just went click, just stopped. Okay. So what we're left then was with the tone coming from the laptop. And this is again where it starts getting quite interesting. Because one of the people that was with us was one of the mediums that had been with us initially in 1990, whatever it was. And she'd come along because she was interested to see what was going to happen. So she went along, she stood over at the St. Matthew altar. Oh, but before I go there, in 1995, when I was first there, I got lifted off my feet. Literally lifted off my feet. I'm standing in front with my shoulder blades against the St. Matthew altar. It's only, when I say it's an altar, it's only maybe about yay big, about like maybe 5 foot across. In depth, maybe 5, 7 or 8 inches, and in height, it's maybe about 5 foot. Anyway, they're very, very small altars. But altars they are, nevertheless. Anyway, I'm standing with my back against this thing. And all of a sudden, my arms started to drift up from my sides like this, literally drift up from my sides. And I'm thinking, wow. And my wife's videoing all this. Then all of a sudden, I feel myself coming up off the floor. It's almost as if something had placed its like a lifting force under my heels, and it's pushing upwards, pushing me up off the floor. And I sort of stumbled forward a little bit. And remember, is there's nothing else happening. There's no sound. There's nothing. This is just happening. But we think that the mediums had something to do with this. We think the mediums were somehow, they'd unwittingly started to trigger something at the St. Matthew altar. Anyway, I said to my wife, give me the camera, pet. I said, go and stand against that altar. And she said, okay. And I didn't tell her anything. She stood there just for a few seconds, and all of a sudden her arms started to lift up from her sides. And I said, what do you feel? She said, oh, it's like something coming up off the floor. I said, well, I think we'll just leave it at that, because I didn't want you, because obviously we don't know what's happening. We don't know why it's happening either. So we left it at that. But anyway, snap forward again to 2005, 2006. What happened then was when the laptop, I should say, when this is churning out this note, one of the medium who had been there with us, she stands with her back to the altar, and I stood about 3 foot from her, facing her. And it was the weirdest sensation, because from the floor, you could feel this, it wasn't warm air rising, it was cold air, icy cold air was rising up from the floor, okay? And you could put your arms out from your sides, and it was like pushing, you were moving it through a barrier. It was slightly warm on the outside and bitterly cold on the inside, that something was getting kicked off right on this point. So, to be honest with you, and I ain't lying, I'm starting to panic a little bit now, because we didn't know what was going to happen. So we just said, right, switch off the laptop, which we did, and the whole thing just collapsed. Excuse me. So we just had to stop at that, because I was getting frightened, because I could see something happening over which we would have no control, and we didn't want anything like that to happen, because something very strange was happening. It was paranormal, it was supernatural, but there's something very, or maybe it wasn't, maybe this is physics involved in this. This was just sound affecting its environment, especially the altar. But the other thing we know about the chapel is that there is an intersection of ley lines under the chapel. And we think these ley lines intersect particularly under right underneath the altar, the St. Matthew altar. And the other thing we know about Roslyn Chapel is, again, the Lady Chapel, if you look up in the ceiling of the Lady Chapel, there are these cubes. There's 342. I can't remember the exact number. Some of them will get broken off. But there's 340 cubes in the roof of the Lady Chapel. And each of these tubes is different. And they've all got different designs that have been carved into them. And we think that these represent musical notes, because I know that we had a film crew turn up at my house once, and they wanted to try and create these using cymatics. They were going to do it using cymatics. But this wouldn't have been available at the time that the chapel was built, obviously. But there was a German physicist called Ernst Schladny. He came up with these Schladny patterns. And how they created these was, they'd take a thin plate of copper, or maybe glass, but probably copper, because obviously it's not going to break. So they would fasten the copper onto something, so they fasten the copper plate by like a fairly firm rod. They'd sprinkle very fine sand or salt upon the surface. Then they'd use a violin bow or a musical bow and create musical notes. And because of the vibrations, depending on the note they were creating, it would produce different patterns on the actual on the copper plate. Now we know for a fact that some of these designs on the cubes are identical to some of the patterns that are being created. So William Sinclair, when he had his, he knew what he was doing. I think that he knew that this doorway was there. I think he exploited the properties of the chapel to create this. Don't know why. I can speculate, but that's all it is, speculation. I think he hid something right on the other side of this doorway. And I also think that he left the key for anyone with the eyes to see there. And the key is actually shown in these musical notes. The other reason I think these things are musical notes is that there's little angels carved out as part of the carvings, and they're playing little musical instruments, stone instruments, and these cubes are emanating from the instruments. So it's clearly a musical notation, a musical progression. But there, I'm afraid we had to leave it, because once the chapel got wind of what we'd been doing, they disapprove of this heartily, because this is not, they don't want to have people like me pitching up on their doorstep trying all sorts of weird experiments. because they might frighten away the paying customers, sort of thing, you know. But yeah, but they're none. But put it this way, we've never been allowed back to do it. But yes, there is a portal. Yes, I know where it is to the inch, and yes, I know how to activate it, and it's in that chapel. But like I say, it was hinted at in one of the legends associated with the chapel, which is that the physical doorway to heaven is in there.
You said something wanted to come through. Did you feel that it was a good thing or a bad thing? The mediums.
The medium didn't comment on that. It was just someone. She said someone. There was like people. She thought there were people. There might have been a spirit. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know.
Sure,
I'm not going to even speculate on it. But she said that they can come through, but the problem was we can go through from our side to theirs if the conditions are right. And I don't think she was too keen on actually pursuing that too far in case she fell through, more or less.
I've got so many questions along this vein, but I just want to let people know that in the afterthought, actually, I've got a bunch of pictures of Roslyn Chapel pulled up, as well as the ceiling here, and it's in 5 strips, which makes me think of a major fifth. And you're mentioning playing two tones, and then so yes, a lot of harmonic intonations, and we're going to talk more about it. I just want to also make sure that we start talking about how freaky portals actually are. So, have you ever stepped into a portal? Do you think?
Yeah, well, I've been on the boundary of one when I lifted off, when I literally started,
Right.
I started, I'm saying levitate. I wasn't floating about in midair. It was nothing like that. I was starting to come off the floor. I would say that maybe about 1/4 of an inch, I was off the floor. And then that's when I fell forward and actually fell out of the portal, I think is the best way of putting it, because everything was okay after that. I mean, literally, I must have been literally on the cusp of that portal when I was coming off the ground. Had to be. So I know exactly to the inch where it is.
So interesting. Interesting. So, and also you mentioned the cold temperature change, which also you said, is associated with the paranormal. And we get this association in temperature changes, but maybe it could be portals. So do you think that maybe ghosts are just simply entities accessing portals and coming through, so they're not necessarily spirits of the undead?
I would say that in some instances that is almost certainly the case, yeah. But in other instances, no, because what we know about them doesn't line up that way, because some of these things you can interact with, and in real time they'll interact with you. So that is a level of consciousness there. So it's a very, very, you know yourself, man, but when you get into the subject, it goes off in all sorts of different directions, and there's all sorts of layers to it. Have I seen a ghost? Yeah. Have I seen a UFO? Yeah. I've actually seen all this stuff. Have I seen an ET? Yeah. Have I been abducted? Yeah, twice. Come on, man. How much have I got to do here? Yeah, I know what you're saying, though. Yeah, I'm an absolute believer. But okay, I'll backtrack a little bit. You can chase me up or pull me back if you wish. But the thing that brought me off the fence as regards paranormal phenomena and manifestations of it was I saw a shadow person once. This was the case because one of my books is called Revenants, Haunted Places and Haunted People, and that is a selection of the cases that I've actually worked on. And one of them was in a little hotel in a little town called Doune, 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 in Stirlingshire in Scotland. We'd been asked, would we go along and try and help this woman out because there was stuff happening in our hotel. The hotel, I'm saying it is a hotel now, but it was actually 3 or 4 houses that were sort of bought over and converted into a hotel in a little row in this village of Doune. Now, what happened to me was that I went across and we talked to the woman and that was fine. And I went back again on my own before I brought mediums in so I could get a feel for this. And it's either early spring or it's late. I know it's bitterly cold. You can see your breath in the air and stuff. So we get into the hotel and we talked to the woman. And we went up to her own into her office, in point of fact. And the fire was on and it was nice and warm and stuff. So I'm sitting on a settee, a brother sitting beside me, she's sitting opposite me, and there was another woman sitting on her right-hand side on another settee. Now, I'm sitting, we're talking about it, I'm listening, yeah, stuff. Then all of a sudden, the temperature dropped. I mean, like, I went, temperature dropped, and the sound quality changed. It was very, very strange. There was almost a hollow quality to the sound. And over her left shoulder, I can see something starting to manifest and up against the curtains of the window. I don't know why I say it was male, but to me, this thing was male. This was not a female. It wasn't neutral. This was a male of some sort. About 6 or 7 foot tall, quite broad, very, very. It was more an outline, a shape. There was no defining human shape features. There were no features. This was just a black human shape, and it's getting more and more defined, and it's getting colder and colder in this room. And mind you, it was really warm with the fire. It should have been, but it wasn't. And this thing's manifesting, and because I didn't want it to happen, I said to myself, "Stop. You'll need to stop this. I'm not ready for it. I'm not here to deal with this. You'll need to stop it." And it just went click. It stopped. It just went, switched off. Temperature came back up, and the sound came back to where it had been. So the woman was chatting away. Now, I'd missed half of what she was saying because I was too concentrated on this thing materializing over her left shoulder. So I said, "Excuse me, could I just stop you a minute?" So I said to her brother, who was sitting on her right, I said, "Did you feel anything just now?" "Yeah," he says, "it got really cold. And the sound changed." "Yeah, good." I said, "Well, thanks for that." But the woman whose shoulder this thing manifested, she didn't feel anything different. And the woman who was sitting on the settee on her right hand side, she didn't feel anything different. It's just me and her brother. But something absolutely 100% manifested then. But anyway, we said, "Okay, we'll put it in this little box and put it to one side." But went back with mediums. I went back with 2 mediums to this hotel. And I swear to God, this is one of the most abundantly haunted buildings I've ever been in. And the thing was, one of the medium, well, it was a woman called Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie told me a lot of this stuff is happening for you. It's you that's meant to see this. This is why you're actually seeing it. I think they were, if you like, facilitating it because of their abilities. That was being facilitated through them for me. But anyway, in the building, there's a flight of stairs runs up to the private quarters of the woman and her family. Now I'm standing about a third of the way up the staircase. Anne-Marie's standing on my left, and her husband Jim's standing at the top of the staircase. Then all of a sudden, a breeze starts to blow down the staircase, and it was actually ruffling my hair. It was quite a powerful little wind. And she says, she says, if we really upset this thing, it'll push us off the staircase if it can. And what we're actually feeling is it trying to get us off the staircase. But she gave us a story about this. What you're actually feeling, there was a girl on here who fell down the staircase and she died. And the reason that she hasn't moved on is because she wants revenge. She wants to get back at her father. Because the girl was pregnant, and back in the 1800s, you didn't get pregnant outside marriage. I mean, it just didn't happen. It was unthinkable. So she fell down the staircase, and she died on the staircase, and the baby was lost and all the rest of it. So the medium said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll reunite her with the spirit of the dead baby, and we'll see what happens. How about that?" I said, "Whatever, So I'm standing on the staircase. The wind is still blowing down it, but this wind. She says, "Right." She said, "I'll do that. I'll reunite her with the dead baby." And she's talking me through this. And I didn't have to be told that she reunited the spirit with the dead baby. I felt it happen. And when she was doing this, I could hear horses. I could smell like farmyards, not dirty, but farmyard smells, hay and straw and stuff like that. I could smell all this. And I could feel the temperature started to go up and down like a yo-yo, up, down, up, down, up, down. And she didn't have to say, "She's gone." I felt her go. And I felt her being reunited with the dead baby. It was quite emotional. I could feel my eyes starting to prickle because it was quite beautiful in a way that she'd actually done this, and she'd actually cleared the spirit off the staircase. Because the lady who owned, she doesn't own the hotel now, am I? It's changed hand a couple of times. But she actually felt it as well, because she sensed the difference on the staircase, because at the time she was hearing her name getting called, all sorts of stuff, and there was this girl that had died on the staircase. She was calling her name. So it was all quite sad and quite beautiful in a way. But I also, one of the things I also felt on when the mediums are there, we're going through the bedrooms. And she said, "I'll tell you what." She says, "Put your hand," there was like a little chest of drawers. She says, "Put your hand down there," maybe about a foot off the ground, about 18 inches off the ground. And there was a strange, an electrical sensation, like a little prickling. She says, "A dog." That's the spirit of a dog you're actually feeling. And it was so strange. And I go, wow, this is great. But yeah, also, I have to tell you, and your viewers and listeners, be very careful when you do this, because if you start messing with the subject, you don't come away unscathed sometimes, because I brought stuff home with me, okay? And it manifested in my house, and I had to get rid of it. And fortunately, it went. It went. Now, how it manifested was I'll tell you how it manifested. Used to get, I would say, like a 5-gallon drum of oil, okay? Maybe about 18 inches across, maybe about 4 foot high, roughly. And that was the dimensions of this manifestation in the house. It was a stench. It was a really foul, like sewage, a stench in the house. And my wife, God bless her, she tends to say to me things, what the hell have you done now? What you been messing with now, yeah? So I said, oh, well, nothing. It'll go away, I don't know what it is. Anyway, there's this stench. It's in my living room, okay, right in front of the chair she normally sits in, her armchair. And she went out at the time the grandkids were pretty small, so she used to go out and babysit, and when she went out, this stench is still in the house. So I stood in the kitchen doorway, looking down at the living room, along the length of the living room, and I said, look, you'll need to go. I said, I understand you've come to visit me, you've come to see me, you've attached yourself to me, but you really can't stay here, because you're going to frighten my wife and you're going to frighten my grandkids. Well, the stench then was right in front of me. I mean, it moved right to me. I said, look, go, please go. You'll have to go now. And it was like a switch going off. It just went, okay. Now, I was lucky. Now, that's happened a couple of times in this house through my own stupidity. And both times I've managed to get the stuff out of the house. But it's a warning to your viewers and your listeners. Don't mess with the stuff unless you're prepared to take some hits, because this stuff can play nasty sometimes. It doesn't always play nice.
Can you rule out that your wife was trolling you, sort of pranking you by doing what we call crop dusting, which is where you fart in a part of the house and you walk off real fast and you leave the stench there? No, we can just rule that out? Okay. Also, Bigfoot is associated with this foul odor as well as the presence of Bigfoot. Even though no Bigfoots are seen, it's in the woods when it occurs. So anything freaky that happens in the woods is Bigfoot, right?
Funny you should say it, because a friend of mine called Joe Stewart, he lives in Michigan. Joe is a Bigfoot. He's a demonologist. He travels all over the States, cleansing houses, binding demons. And his wife is part Dorinda. She's part Native American. And they're also Bigfoot hunters. In fact, I edited his new book, which is coming, edited and proofread it for him. And he's got a new book on Bigfoot coming out pretty soon. But up until the time that I met you, Joe, as far as Bigfoot was concerned, I was like, yeah. But after talking to Joe and looking at that book, no, these things exist 100%, absolutely. And I don't think they necessarily exist 100% in this reality. I think that they're, if you like, they can shift between realities, I believe.
Yeah, I like this, and so let's follow this for a minute. So in Josh Cutchin's book, and I'm going to give him a shout out, this is another great one to connect with here, Where the Footprints In, he talks about some anomalous cases of Bigfoot, seemingly, and some portal type technology, right? To literally, his book is titled Where the Footprints End. Yeah. Now, some folks say that they'll follow tracks out into snow and they will just literally stop as if they were picked up out of the sky, or perhaps they step through a portal, which would mean that they're no longer in this physical reality as we understand it and in another. So this could be an interesting way of sort of delineating that the freaky woo-woo accesses portals, and maybe introversely that the freaky woo-woo is accessing us through portals, and maybe something's just getting stuck and being dropped off. Because if you think about it, if we end up through a portal and don't know how to get back, now we're haunting that reality in some way. Let's say also that we're not 100% physically revealed in that reality, meaning that their eyes operate in a different spectrum from what our visible makeup is. And so maybe we would be haunting that reality, just trying to get the hell out of there, or be associated as a cryptid. Maybe there's a Brian Allan, cryptid story over there of you slipping through a portal and running around trying to get the hell back.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that is entirely possible, because in the course of doing this stuff for the past, well, I would say I've done it hands-on for about 45 years, maybe 45, 50 years. I've seen a lot of stuff, and some stuff I wouldn't even try to explain because I can't. I have no. I can speculate plenty, but is it a fact? No, it's speculation. End of. That's all it is, because we don't know.
That's okay. That's what the show's built on, just talking about the idea. So you're welcome if you'd like to go, I've never said this publicly, but I kind of think this would be fun if it was that, but I'm not going to hang my hat on that I'm claiming that this is my position. You're welcome to speculate wildly, Bubba.
Yeah, well, wait till we get something to actually speculate on.
Fair enough. Well, what do you think of if we find a portal, should we go into it?
Look, the trouble with portals is we know where this end is. We don't know where the other end is. Now, this is when we get to some of the sort of anomalies of portals. To create a portal, you've got to know where it's going to end up. Okay, so you can't just create a portal here and go into on spec that you have any some idea, because you have no idea where it's going to end up. And when you get there, it's a bit like the old Stargate series or the TV series. That once you get the Stargate at the other end, you've got to have a means of getting back again. So there's a lot of stuff about portals. Well, not so much portals. Well, Stargate portals, the same thing really, I suppose, just on a bigger scale.
That was a question I had, the difference between the two, but you're saying the same thing?
Yeah.
All right, we'll roll it out. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, but as far as what's in Roslyn Chapel, where that or when that would end up, because I don't think that there's actually a where. There might be a when involved in it. You might be time traveling through this thing as well.
Yes.
Because when it's been suggested that Sir William Sinclair, when he built Roslyn Chapel, he knew what he was doing, because nothing in there is there by accident. It's all there deliberately, because he damn near approved every single carving that's in there. Okay, every single one of them. That he was trying to give a message. It's been speculated the chapel is actually a library built in stone that is there throughout for the generations to come. The message is there for those who know how to read it. Now, there are Masonic connections. There are a lot of Masonic connections, in point of fact. There are Knights Templar connections in it, because the carvings are there. They're there for all to see. But it's the interpretation, and also the Green Man. Now, you might ask, why would you have representations of the Green Man, which is a pagan symbol, in a Christian building? Because if you go into the chapel and you walk round clockwise, they start off the images of the Green Man are quite young. And as you move around, they get older and older. It's the old the cycling of life and rebirth, death and rebirth. In fact, the chapel itself is a celebration of death and rebirth, just as the same as Christ is concerned, because the congregation in the chapel is facing the east. Okay, now the altar, the main altar, is actually in the east. It's not right up against the wall. It's well out from the wall, 7 or 8 feet out from the wall. The congregation is actually, in effect, facing the crucified Christ when it's facing to the east. Because, as you probably know yourself, that Christianity is a sun-based religion. All religions, in point of fact, you've got to be very careful who you say this to, but all religions are sun-based at the end of the day.
You have a very open-minded audience here, sir, so please feel free to go for it. Yeah, but we do not disagree at all.
Good.
It's very interesting. And guys, I've got some pictures pulled up here, so make sure you check the link in the show description for the afterthought. We are absolutely going to cut through this thing, because I'm seeing mushroom cult tie-ins to the architecture here as well. And I'm going to point out something you may not be able to unsee, but you probably already got it. Okay, so let's say, so we go into a portal. You feel the temperature change around you. It might be a ghost. It might not. We can just say that maybe something environmentally is changing, which I thought was very interesting. Whenever you think that the being that you saw, the shadow being, sort of materialized in more solidified ways as the temperature altered, or as the environment altered, which also coincided with a sound change, right? Which is also fascinating, because also this now ties into the Oz effect. Are you familiar with that?
Jenny Randall's and the Oz effect.
There you go, Jenny Randall's, yes.
Well, the thing is that there's nothing in physics gives you a free lunch, okay? If you get a manifestation of physical action, something's had to power that up. Right. Now, in my case, when I was in that room and I saw this shadow man, the shadow figure emerging, the temperature drop was powering up It's what do you call it? The law of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exchange.
To me,
Yeah.
it's exchanging one form of power for another. Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting concept. I almost think of it like the being itself is sort of terraforming where you are so it can survive in your environment. We think about aliens coming in spaceship suits and needing that because they don't breathe oxygen or to the level we do, whatever. So you think about this idea of an entity, if it's standing there, no suit, right, or doesn't need an environment apparatus to alter, maybe it can alter its environment to suit itself, which is
absolutely
fascinating. That could be what this Oz effect, what the smells that you were smelling is all about, is sort of this idea that it's actually the environment in which the entity is living sort of is what you're accessing or is what's mobile, which is fascinating.
Well, what I've tried to do in the book, The Hole in the Sky, is illuminate, shine a light on this kind of stuff and let us see where it's going, because the last book I actually wrote, I mean, I've written it's 13 and a half books is the best way of putting this, because the last book I co-wrote with Barry Fitzgerald, who was quite well known, Now, but the book is called The Deceptions of Gods and Men. And that book, the odd thing was Barry had already started writing it when he asked me on board what I'd like to write with him. And I had to get my head around what he'd written first, because there were some of the concepts, I mean, I was aware of them, but I hadn't thought about them in any depth. But what the book is about is these entities. In fact, I spoke to David Icke about this. I saw David up at Roslyn Chapel one time. I was up doing a bit of filming for him. And when I talk about this, and he was asking me what the book was about, and I told him. And he sat down and put his head in his hands, and he said, Brian, he said, that's exactly what one of your book's about. I thought, whoops, I hope I haven't stepped in your corner. Good.
Not at all. Anyway, you're giving that perspective from your insight, which he's grateful that more perspectives are lining up, because now you guys are three powerful voices out there doing that.
Well, the thing is that these entities that exist, this is where the deceptions comes in, that these things are liars, okay? They're born liars, and they can't exist without us. They need us to get into our reality, because where they are is literally nothing. It's void. It is literally nothing. It's maybe a hard concept to realize, but that where they live, there is nothing, absolutely nothing. And they are desperate to actually come to our side to experience a physical reality. And they'll do anything they can to hang on, any sort of trick. But ultimately, they've got to. If you die, they've got nowhere to hide, and they literally fall off their reality back into the void again, and that's where they go. But the book's about that, the deceptions of gods and men.
So there is this a specific type of creature that lives in the void specifically to access us to get out of the void. Would you call those archons or these beings like this? I
think they've had. Barry and I came to this conclusion. They've had various names over the millennia. Sure. But they are basically the one entity, the one kind of being. I'm just going to mute myself for a second because I'm going to.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that there's sort of a fog here that access you to feed off of you to access our reality, but also it challenges you and makes you grow, and it's part of the spiritual ascension or sort of part of our progressive progress, it seems to be.
I would say so, but what we think, or what Barry and I tend to think, and it was fortunate, but because I know Barry pretty well, him and his wife have come and stayed with us. We've gone to Ireland and stayed with him. And we knew where the other were both coming from, because these things, they've always been there, always, and they've always needed us to perpetuate themselves, because without us, they cannot exist, and they need us to get here, because they are and what they're trying to create. Well, I thought this, and I ran it with Barry, and I did a chapter on this. That I think what these are, I think AI. Okay, they are directing AI. Okay, so they can latch on to a form of AI and exist full time in our existence, in our reality, without the need of us. And once they latch on to AI,
I talked about this. Second episode, I brought this up, and actually the Arecibo crop circle answered Carl Sagan's 10 points about our biology. He sent out in the space or whatever that we are carbon-based life form. We have DNA. Here's where we come from. They answered where we were carbon-based life form, that they were a silica-based life form, which is what all of our technology is based off of. So exactly to what you're talking about. I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. Man,
Well,
that's
it's
interesting, Brian.
It's surprising that, because this is what I tend to find that when I'm talking with guys like yourself, or you're talking shop with your buddies, you tend to find that the same ideas are floating about because it's the only logical conclusion you can come to. And maybe you haven't said it out loud, but other people are thinking it anyway.
But isn't it interesting that we sort of all come to these level ups in our understandings about the same things about the same time together? Like you and I sitting here are pretty much beyond the nuts and bolts specifically element of any of this, right? That it could be just something manifest. So you kind of emotionally mature in a way as you research this further. And so I think it's fascinating, man, that we can come to these types of just questions. You know, this type of critical thinking that we're offering this reality is something that these conversations really lend. And your work, man, this is very cool.
Well, these conversations are also they allow me to discharge a little bit, because I don't have to explain to you what I'm talking about, because you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I've given presentations in halls and stuff, and you've actually got to, if you like, bait the audience a little bit to let them know what the hell you're going to talk about. Otherwise, you can actually see their eyes rolling at the back of their heads and they don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I've made statements at conferences I've spoken at. And I remember this lady got really hacked off. She was really upset because I said, in essence, there is no difference between an alien and an angel. I said, because they're both not terrestrial and they both can interact with us. And she went absolutely nuts. How dare you say this about angels? And she was a new ager. Oops, what have I said?
It's okay. No, we talk about it all. Yeah.
She was very new age, and she wasn't very impressed with us at all. I didn't apologise because I didn't agree with her, but simple as that. And I went back and said it again. I said, you tell me what's the difference between an angel and an ET? What's the difference? And she did. She got a bit tongue tied and all that. She sat down, but looked daggers at me for the rest of the presentation. You know, yeah. Yeah.
Her difference is that she has an emotional connection to one.
Yeah, that's right.
Being benevolent, and so therefore it can't. And anything that doesn't fall into that category is going to fall into the other. She's already got it figured out there, Brian. So no need to go further, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, brother. So before we launch into our afterthought, I just want to thank you for hanging out. Again, want to remind the audience that all the ways to find him are going to be located down in the show description. Your incredibly cool book, The Hole in the Sky, as well as it's funny you mentioned Barry. We've had him on with Daniel Beckman. We did a Deceptions of Men. We covered it without you, but it's cool to now have you on with this. So Barry's, everybody in the audience already knows Barry as well. So all the ways, again, to find this gentleman and his amazing work are going to be located down below. Shout out Philip Mansell of Flying Disc Press for this beautiful, beautiful community that we get to share here. Also, just want to remind the audio-only audience to check out the remarkable Rita Roberts and her art. She's got a portal kicking down there. I feel like I'm going to fall into it. Barry, Brian, what do you think there? We're going to fall right into that.
Pretty cool, yeah.
So cool.
That. Yeah.
How you can find this as well as her other art are going to be located down in the show description. She's actually going to join us for the Afterthought as well, which is a great way to support the show. So y'all check the link down there. That's hosted on Patreon, as well as you can come join us for the live hangouts that we do also. All right, so Brian, before we wrap here, just want to make very clear here that you are awesome and welcome back any damn time. And we have a ton of things to talk about. I want to know where you see the next 5 years of us going, my friend. What do you see next? There's so many wild things happening right now.
Yeah. Well, look, providing that we don't end up as glass because we've nuked each other to death, okay?
Which would be silica.
Yeah, or silica.
Should be benefit for somebody.
Yeah. But the thing is that the developments that have come across, the stuff off the Nimitz, the Tic Tacs, all the rest of it, the Go Fast and all that, the gimbal. I don't think they're theirs. I think they're ours. I think these things are our technology, not their technology, okay? But as far as interstellar travel goes, because interplanetary travel is hard enough, difficult enough. Okay, we'll get to Mars, and maybe we will, maybe we won't find signs of civilization on there, a dead civilization long gone. But I would like to think that we can find a practical way to travel to the stars, because as it is just now, what's available to us in the form of suspended animation just is not practical. It's not practical, and it's not fast enough either, because when you start talking about traveling at a superluminary speed, faster than light and all the rest of it, you're talking about technologies that we just don't have. But I think it might be better that instead of looking out we start looking in, okay, and we start looking at the other realities that spirit seems to inhabit. Because once we understand that, and that's a big if, but it's a big once. But once we understand that, we're halfway there to actually fixing the mess that we're in, I think.
Absolutely beautiful, my friend. All right, well, like I said, guys, all the ways to find him located down below, as well as the phenomenal Rita Roberts in her artwork. I want to close out with your voice, Brian Allan. Tell us what gets you out of bed every morning. What keeps you moving forward, brother?
The chance the hope that I'm going to find an answer to the questions I'm looking for. But seriously, that's about it, man.
Just want to take a moment here and thank the amazing Brian Allan, whose work is all located down below. Check out his book, The Hole in the Sky, all about portals, and we are absolutely going to have Mr. Allan back on to talk about all kinds of cool stuff. Join us also down in the Patreon link down there for the Hangouts. We'll probably have Brian back over to hang out with us. We do those for about 2 hours each time that we do them, and they are amazing. Definitely a great way to support your favorite show, as well as you get access to all of the other content that we're doing, including the Afterthoughts, which is right after this conversation here. We go really into the Roslyn Chapel. We're sharing screen. We're doing all sorts of cool stuff. You're not going to want to miss it. Again, another phenomenal way to support your favorite show. I also want to mention Rita Roberts down there, her artwork. Check it out, guys. And if you would like to procure the piece, if she's willing to let go of it, that was created here live, or any of her other artwork, please check out the link down there that supports her. And either way, just giving her a little hello over there on Instagram or something like that does not go unnoticed either. All right, guys, so go out into this incredibly beautiful and mysterious place, whatever the hell this thing is, and y'all pick up a piece of litter. Please and thank you, get out of the left-hand lane. Be nice to everybody coming across. You don't know what the hell their day is like, you know what I mean? And also just go out into this wild, weird, whatever the fuck kind of world some days, and just be good to one another. Love yourself, be kind to yourself, be good to one another. Sending out all the love in the world, honestly and seriously. Thank you for everything from the bottom of my heart. Looking forward to the next one. You guys are going to love it. We will see you next time.